Welcome back. We're talking about Columbus for the next few lectures, and I want, in this one, to discuss Columbus's pitch. This is the argument that Columbus made to get financial support for his project to go to China. If you think about it, it must have seemed very strange to people in the 15th century when Columbus said that he was going to cross the ocean sea going west to get to China, which of course is in the Far East. Columbus had pitched this idea to a number of royal houses in Europe. I believe the English, French, Portuguese, Spanish. And then in 1492, having been refused by all of these monarchs, Columbus receives word that the King and Queen of Spain, Isabella and Ferdinand, want an audience with him. So he hurries to the capital. Now imagine this, you arrive at the capital, one of the courtiers there tell you that you've got 15 minutes. You've got an audience of 15 minutes with the King and Queen of Spain to make your pitch, to convince them to support your venture. What are you going to tell them? So that's what I want to talk about here. What is Columbus's pitch? First, he talks about gold and precious metals that he will find and bring back to Spain. He talks about spices, cinnamon, pepper, nutmeg, saffron, cloves, a variety of spices that are available only in the Far East, and Europeans can only acquire them at great expense. Of course, by the 15th century, you have the establishment of the great Muslim kingdoms, the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid, and then the Mughal Empire. This dominates southern and southwestern Asia. And as things from the Far East make their way westward to Europe, the price goes up dramatically each time they're exchanged. As historians, we refer to these Islamic empires as the Muslim middlemen. And Columbus, of course, is simply trying to bypass them. Instead of going overland across Eurasia to the Far East, Columbus is proposing to go west across what he believes is a very narrow ocean sea. Spices, of course, are highly prized by Europeans. They mask the smell of food that's going bad. They're preservatives. Remember, this is the 15th century. There's no refrigeration. In fact, there's no ice. Unless you live near a glacier, there's no ice. Spices are highly prized. You pay taxes with spices. You can trade with them. Even today, if you go to the grocery store, go to the spice rack and take a look at the price per pound of imported spices, and you'll see they're still quite expensive. In Columbus's journal, he says, and this reflects back on what we talked about in the last lecture with Polo, and Polo detailing how the great Khan had asked the Pope to send men to his kingdom that could make the argument for Christianity. In Columbus's journal, he says, quote, "Because of the report that I had given your highnesses about the lands of India and about a prince who is called the Grand Khan, how many times he and his predecessors had sent to Rome to ask for men learned in our holy faith, but these had never been provided, and thus so many peoples were lost, falling into idolatry and accepting false and harmful religion. You thought of sending me, Christopher Columbus, to the said regions of India to see if the said princes, and to see how their conversion to our holy faith might be undertaken." You can see Columbus here is lifting directly from Polo in his argument to the King and Queen of Spain of the glory that they will all receive if they could indeed convert the Chinese, the people of the Far East, from their paganism to Christianity. And as devout Catholics, this is a very powerful argument. What else does Columbus promise? New lands that he discovers. He promises a new route to the east, obviously, a watery route instead of a land-based route. This proposal, again, struck many as being outrageous because there's no certainty of the width of this ocean sea that we see off the west coast of Spain. These men knew the world was round. Columbus obviously was one of the great navigators of his time. And you spend any time at sea, and it's obvious that the Earth is a globe. As you can see the sun come up over the water, first thing you see when you see a ship approaching are the tips of its sails, right? Then you see more of the sails, then you see the hull of the ship. So the ship is either coming up over a globe or it's emerging straight from the ocean itself, which is unlikely. So Columbus makes this pitch and promises these things. You can see it in his journal there on the first page. Columbus talks about the Great Khan and of his desire to make contact with this man whom he perceives as the descendant of Kublai Khan, and to make diplomatic contact with the world's most powerful man, and to make direct trade connections to the Far East, thereby skipping the Muslim middleman, enriching the Spanish kingdom, and making Columbus himself very wealthy and powerful. So again, I want you to make this link. The Mongols, Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, they're tied together in this sort of grand venture that Columbus is pitching. Now, in our next lecture, we're going to try to get inside Columbus's head a bit. One way to do this is to read his journal. The other way to do it is to look at the maps that Columbus examined. We know that he looked at some of these maps. It's conjecture about the others. Nevertheless, they tell the same story. And if you can get inside Columbus's sort of imaginative landscape of the world, then his venture begins to make some sense. And you can see why the king and queen were convinced, as indeed they were, to provide backing for Columbus's adventure in 1492. So I'm going to stop there with Columbus's pitch, and then in our next lecture we'll talk about Columbus's maps. Thank you.